Hello YouTube viewers and Random Robot Wars fans. I'm lucky enough to be joined today by Mr. Pete Redmond, who may or may not know as one of the members of the Deitor team. Now Pete, you've spent most of your life now working with robotics. I'm just wondering what it was that first got you involved in this kind of line of work.
Well, I started off actually as an aeronautical engineer, so I was working on autopilot systems, and my first experience with robots, real sort of remote control style robots, was Robot Wars in the US. And a friend of mine, Zulu, who was also on the Deitor team, he'd been in the US and he saw Robot Wars in the US, and he said, "Oh, you have to see this thing, it's amazing. They have these robots with weapons on them and they bash each other up, and it's really cool." So it was in the early days of, well, I don't think I was even using Google then. I think I was using something else like Copernicus or something. And I did an online search and I found out that BBC had bought the rights for Robot Wars in the UK, and they were going to start building, and they were looking for entries. So I said, okay, we could do that. Let's start building the robot.
Fair enough. And now you actually work with robotics. You teach robotics as well, is that correct?
Yeah, I teach robotics, and I teach robotic vision especially. So I'm trying to teach robots how to see things. I built some replicas for TV and movies as well, and I've a replica R2D2, I have a replica Dalek. We did some work with Top Gear. We built some Robot Wars cars for Top Gear, for example. So, yeah.
Awesome stuff. So talking about Robot Wars, of course, the first machine you entered in was Nemesis, and then you changed it to Deitor. What I loved about Deitor the most was the fact that instead of, with most machines with their flippers, you know, they had CO2 powered gas rams, but with you had the car springs, which I thought was a genius little touch. Can you tell us where that idea came from?
Sure. By the time we sort of retired Nemesis from Robot Wars after season 2, and at that stage all of the robots started to evolve into CO2 flippers wedge shaped, and I thought it was a bit boring, so I wanted to do something different. One of the problems with the CO2 is that they run out of gas relatively quickly. After so many flips, that's it, they can't do any more. So I wanted something that could regenerate, or that could keep going for the entire thing. At the time, wedges were becoming really popular, and all of the robots were sort of evolving into this wedge shape. So I wanted something different. So I thought, if I can get something using hydraulics that I can compress springs down and store that energy and then release it really quickly, that would be a good way to sort of get around that problem with the CO2 running out. So I came up with the idea of using car suspension springs, and I had a bit of trouble getting some springs that were strong enough to flip, to store enough energy. So the first season that we used Deitor in, we were using car springs, and I think we did that for one season only, and then we moved on to truck suspension springs. So we had a really huge amount of pressure. We were bending steel left, right and centre, trying to get that stored energy in there. But eventually we were able to get it and lock it in, but it still wasn't good enough. It wasn't strong enough to flip us back over, and that was the biggest problem that we had.
Can I just ask, a lot of people ask this, you probably know exactly what I'm going to say. What's with the fur?
The fur was, when we first built Nemesis, and it was moving around on the floor, so that's really cool because it was round and it looked like a little animal on the ground. So that's cool. We'll have to cover it with something and paint it up or whatever it was. So we said, let's cover it in fur. There's no flamethrowers. The flamethrowers were against the rules, so you're not allowed to do that. But what they didn't tell us was that the house robots were going to have flamethrowers. So we went off, and I was sent off to buy some fur for the robot. We were supposed to get some sort of cow fur or something like that, leopard skin or something like odd. And I saw this red and black stuff. I thought, I have to get that. So I got the red and black fur, covered the robot in red and black, and I just put eyes on it and gave it a little personality, which was, a lot of the robots didn't have personality at the beginning. They were just little machines that moved around. So it worked really well.
Awesome. So Deitor obviously retired after about the 5th Wars. Do you still have Deitor now? Is he still kicking around?
I still have Deitor. Deitor hasn't been in any competitive battles for quite some time, but I'm bringing it back out of retirement just to do some show battles, and hopefully it'll work out really well.
Awesome, because it definitely is a fan favourite with so many people out there. Most notably, one of your most famous fights and famous victories was against Tornado in the 5th Wars, where you ended up actually pushing it down the pit. How shocked were you whenever that happened?
Well, if you watch the video, you can see I was really concentrating hard on that, and after a while I realised, hang on a second, we're pushing Tornado. And what had happened was they had a spinning disc, and it got wrapped up in the fur from Detour. So the fur actually stopped their weapon, and it also went in and stopped 2 of their motor drives. So they actually were down to, because it's 4-wheel drive tornado, it's very powerful. 4 750 horsepower, 750 watt motors. So that's like 4 horsepower motors. And we were suddenly able to push it around. And it took me a little while to realize what was going on. And I said, wow. And I belted over, hit the floor release, and dropped down the pit area. And I was able to push them in. We were over the moon. This number 2 seed we knocked out.
It sounds like you have a lot of fun on Robot Wars. Was there much fun behind the scenes with all the other Roboteers?
Well, we certainly had a lot of fun. There was some people who took it very, very seriously. I'm not going to name any names, but yeah, we definitely had a lot of fun. I mean, you can tell, and we got Sportsmanship Award 3 times, I think, out of the 6 seasons that we did. But yeah, we had a lot of crack.
If the show were to ever make a comeback, would you be interested in like either submitting a new robot or resubmitting Detour or working on the show in any capacity?
Absolutely, I'd love to, yeah. If the show comes back, I'm definitely in there. Probably not with Detour, because even though the show stopped, competitive robot fighting has gone on, and the robots now are very, very sophisticated, and they're using very high-spec materials like Hardox armor, which wasn't used in certainly when Detour was being envisaged at the beginning.
So thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us, Pete, today. For people who want to continue to follow your work and follow you building such machines as this, where can they find you on the internet?
Well, you can find us on Mechatrons.com, and we're on Facebook as well.
Excellent. Thanks very much for talking to me today. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
And yourself. Thank you.